I heard a quote recently which I really like, and I actually forget who the quote was by, but it basically alluded to the fact that as human beings we have decided that we prefer the aspects of God rather than God himself or itself, if you want to not place or label God as being a person. We essentially as people have decided to seek the parts of God that we like, and we forget that we have the option to seek God in God's entirety. And whether you want to look at God as being, like a kind of higher power, or an intelligent energy source, or a deity, or just whatever version of God you like, that doesn't really matter. But what I'm talking about is like the totality of every energy source in existence, and that's what I'm labeling as being God, and anything beyond as well. God to me is infinite. God is pure. God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, meaning that God is everywhere at all times. God is all-knowing and has the ability to do anything. He's all-powerful. And I'm saying he because it's just an easy way for me to describe this entity, this energy source. But ultimately, God isn't a man or a woman. God is just a pure energy source, the source of everything. And as human beings, we have access to a limited range of that energy in human form. We actually have, that's not the total truth actually, we have the access to the entire energy source because there is only one energy source, but we choose as human beings to only enjoy parts of the physical reality that give us pleasure, essentially, that we want to enjoy. And this quote was alluding to the fact that we as humans are underselling ourselves because we're living life in such a limited range, really. We're saying that we're seeking things that give us temporary pleasure. We're seeking more money. We're seeking comfort. We're seeking relationships. We're seeking a slightly nicer house, a slightly more comfortable working environment. We're seeking slightly more peace in our meditations, rather than seeking God, rather than seeking the source of all of those teeny little bits of pleasure, those teeny tiny comforts that we're all seeking, those things that make our life just a little bit better. Rather than seeking those, we should be seeking the source of those, which is God. And what the quote really helped me to think about was these little things that we seek are just a fraction, a teeny tiny, incomprehensible fraction of God. So why are we seeking them? Why don't we just go direct to the source? Why don't we go direct to seeking and wanting that pure energy source that we are, that is our deepest nature? That's the joke of it, is that the energy source that I'm talking about is the energy source that has created everything that we have ever interacted with, ever experienced. That is a part of this energy source, but it doesn't mean that we can look at, say a cup of coffee and say that that is the entirety of God, because it's a manifestation of God, but it's not the absolute entirety of God in God's absolute form. If you were to talk about this in terms of like vibrational energy, we could say that a cup of coffee is God at a very lowered level of energy, and we are really seeking God at the highest level of energy, at God frequency, as Nikola Tesla would call it, the frequency of 369, which is the God frequency in his description of it, or in his interpretation of it. But I just think I really wanted this video now that's very rough and ready, I know, but I wanted this video just to be a bit of a brain dump, to give you the inspiration and the thought, if you hadn't already thought of it, to start seeking God in God's absolute form. Rather than seeking the pleasures of God, the tiny little fractions of God that we all seek, go direct to the source. And you can do that quite simply. You don't need to be reading off some elaborate religious script. You can do that, and that's okay, but you don't need to do that. You don't need to do anything too elaborate. Quite simply, in the quiet of your own mind, communicate with God as if you were communicating with your friend, or if you were communicating with yourself, your own inner dialogue, but direct it to that infinite source of energy. And just in your mind, know that that's where it's going. And sort of as you ask for things, or as you ask for guidance, or as you ask for your character defects to be taken away, or for you to be shown where they are so that you can improve them, as you ask for all these things, or even if you ask for someone else for the understanding or the inspiration or the knowledge to help someone else, as you do that, just direct that prayer inwardly to God, to an energy source, to the universe, whatever you call that source, whatever you call that energy. It doesn't even need a label if you don't want to label it, but start communicating and start developing a relationship with the divine, because that is all there is ultimately. And we are, most of us, and I include myself in this, for a lot of my day-to-day just goings on, is I spend so much time thinking about and engaging in the manifestations of God and the divine, or the divine, rather than seeking and communicating with the divine itself. It would be like talking to my hand. It'd be like just associating my hand as being my body, when I've got the entirety of the body here left to be there, ready to be exercised, and all I'm doing is exercising my hand at the minute. And this is a bit like how we are as human beings. We're only exercising our hand, but we're connected at all times to the whole body. So why don't we just exercise the whole body? It's much more fun, it's much more empowering, we can get so much more from that, and it's there ready to be used. And in a similar way, the divine is the same. We have access at all times to the entirety of God, but we choose, because of our ignorance and misunderstanding, we choose only to engage in God's little finger, because we think that, we just don't think beyond that. We don't understand yet that, in a lot of cases anyway, we don't understand that God is there ready for us to interact with. And we can do this simply in the quiet of our own mind, through prayer or through meditation, or a modality along those lines, mantra and things like that. We don't need some elaborate practice. We don't need to worry about having crystals in our house. We don't need to worry about what the moon is doing or what month we were born in. We just need to start getting close to God. We just need to start developing a relationship with the divine. That is all this journey is about, is returning to that source from which we came. And I say from which we came loosely, because there'll be a lot of people jumping in the comments if I don't caveat this with everything is God ultimately. So there's no coming and going as such. That the only coming and going is in our level of consciousness. We're not conscious of our God consciousness yet. And the spiritual journey that we're all on, is one of moving from human consciousness into God consciousness. That's what we're actually looking to do. So we do that by communicating with the God part of ourselves. We communicate with God consciousness from our human consciousness, and we bring our human consciousness up to the level of God consciousness. So this is the process that we're really undertaking when we're on a spiritual path, which you all are if you're watching this video. And we have to start developing a relationship with the divine. We have to start wanting the entirety of the divine. And what, again, if I was to bring this into if I was to look at this a different way, if I was to communicate this to you in a different way to maybe help you understand if it gets a little confusing, we're interacting purely at human consciousness level at the moment. And what we need to start doing is communicating at God consciousness level. And by doing that, we'll eventually merge back into God consciousness level. This is really what we're working towards, and it's a journey we're all on. It's a journey I'm on. It's a journey a lot of my students are on, and more than likely you, if you're watching this, to start to work your way back to God consciousness. So, as human beings, we're so powerful that whatever we put our mind to, whatever we want strongly enough, whatever we aspire towards, that we get. And for most people, because of conditioning, because of what they've been taught, what they've heard, what their friends do, what their family's done, they only aspire to things within the human form, within the human realm. Work, family, relationships, all of these basically mundane things. And because of that, they get them. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. If that's what you want, that's well within your right to do that. But if you want more, if you're someone that knows that isn't going to fulfill you, if you found yourself at the place in your life where you think, I'm not satisfied, I've got a family, I've got a good job, I've got enough money now, that hasn't ticked the box of satisfaction. That's not made me happy. That's not made me content. There's something else. Then you are primed and you are ripe and ready for spiritual growth, for spiritual expansion. And I would advise you to start to develop a relationship now with the higher part of yourself, which is the divine, which is God. And not seeking aspects of God, which are the relationship you have with your partner, with maybe the relationship you have with your children, your career. All of those things are little fractions of God, because everything is God. There's nothing that's outside of God. So the relationship you have is a teeny tiny part of the divine. The job you have is a teeny tiny fraction of the divine. But they're parts of the divine that are moving and changing. We're looking for the part of the divine which is constant, which is absolute, which is pure, which never changes. And so we're really seeking the whole of God rather than just a part of God. And this is really what today's video is about, and I hope this resonates with you if you've watched up till now. I hope it makes sense, and I hope it really inspires you to start turning fully towards God. And when I say fully, I mean you've still got to balance your life. You've still got to earn money. You've still got to keep your family happy. You've still got to keep your body fit and strong and exercise, and there's nothing wrong with those things. But have one foot in this physical world and one foot in your spiritual world, and progress both of them forward. Progress your life forward. Have friends, have a good job, seek the things that you enjoy in your material world. We're here to enjoy and live life. But at the same time, don't forget the spiritual side of things. Don't forget the bigger game. Don't forget what you're really here for, which is to find the divine, which is to work your way back to God consciousness and move that part of your life forward as well. When those two things are moving forward, the physical life and the spiritual life, and this is from my own experience, I feel so aligned when that is the case. I feel so right. Everything feels perfect. And it doesn't mean there's not problems in life and things don't come up, and all of that is normal. That's part of life. But there is an alignment that is found when you can balance those two areas of a person. And I would say nowadays so many people are absolutely void of the God part of themselves. They're not progressing themselves in a spiritual way whatsoever, and they feel very empty and they feel very lost and unfulfilled. And the reason is purely and simply because they're not feeding or giving it any energy or time towards experiencing themselves as God, and developing their consciousness and expanding their consciousness and developing a relationship, forming a relationship with the divine, which is huge. That's really the most important part of life. So I'm going to leave the video at that. I hope it all makes sense and you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you on the next one.